Hi guys, I'm PUTSY and welcome back to my channel, and for today's video I'm going to talk about all the books that I've read in the month of July. And I have to say it was one of the best month for me in terms of reading. I read a lot of books and I also read a lot of great books. I truly honestly enjoyed every single book I've read. Yeah, I'm so excited to talk about it, and let's just move on into the video. So in total, I read 7 books, and it's so crazy to me that I managed to do that. I started 2021 by trying my best to read 1 book a month consistently, and then I increased little by little from 1 to 2 and then 4, and now I've read 7 books, and it was because multiple different reasons. 1, I was in such a great mood for reading. I fell in love with books more and more every single month. And 2, every single book that I've read in July honestly is so exciting and amazing, and it makes me even more excited to read more books. 3, I managed to balance my reading palettes between multiple different genre. I read contemporary, I read fantasy, I read romance, so I never felt bored or in any kind of slump whatsoever. And the last reason, I think mainly because I finally give in and try to listen to audiobook, and the mixture of physical book and audiobook really did help with the amount of book that I managed to consume in July. So I'm going to mention every single book chronologically based on the time I finished the book. And the first one I finished in July is Frankly in Love by David Yoon. I really like it. I've heard great things about it from multiple different booktubers, especially Janani from This Story Ends Over. This is one of her absolute favorite book ever, but also a lot of people like Nicola Yoon's books more than David's. If you don't know, Nicola Yoon is David Yoon's wife. She wrote Everything, The Sun Is Also a Star, and a couple different other books. I think the only book I've read from her is The Sun Is Also a Star, and I like that book very much. So going in this book, I thought I will like that book more than this. I don't know, for some reason that I already made that scenario in my mind, but wow, did I was wrong. I like this way more than The Sun Is Also a Star, even though I love that book. There's just something about this that captured my heart. At first, the first few chapters, I wasn't really into it. I found the language is too teenager-ish. I mean, of course, this is a young adult book. The main character are in high school, and the language reads very teenage, like a very specific kind of teenager, you know? But slowly, after 50 pages in, I was totally hooked. It's about Frankly, who is Korean American, and his parents are kind of racist and only wants Frankly to be very Korean and married with Korean girl, and they always made very unnecessary comments about other communities, about black people, white people, and his sister married a black guy. Unfortunately, it made his parents really angry, so his parents is not really in a talking term with Frankly's sister, until one day Frankly fall in love for the first time with this girl named Brit. But Brit is not Korean, so he didn't know what to do. He didn't want his parents to find out, until one day his parents kind of set up Frankly with Korean in his group named Joy Song. Joy is actually also in a relationship with someone who are not Korean. So Frank and Joy decided to lie to their parents and be in this fake relationship in front of them so they can date whoever they like in real life. And the story got really complicated from there. The story touched on so many different important topics, not only about race and identity, about how difficult it is growing up as a Korean American, but also how to deal with racist parents or family members when you know it's wrong but you also love and respect your family. I also love the dynamics of Frankly and all of his friends, especially his best friends. I kind of forget who his name is, but I love their relationship so much. If you've watched my mid-year freakout book tag, such a tongue twister, but if you watch that video, I mentioned that I'm not typically a crier when I read, but this book almost made me like truly sobbed. It really made my heart break, especially that last part of the book. I kind of wish we get a second book so I can read more about Frankly's journey when he's in university, but the ending left me satisfied but also wanting more. But overall, it was such a wholesome, amazing, important read that touched on so many important topics, and in my opinion it really handled all of those important topics really well. And it also very lovely to see the Korean American culture in this book. I thought it was very vivid and I can imagine everything very well, and I give this book a 4.7 stars, or maybe 4.75, I don't know. Around that. Second book that I read in July was Firekeepers Daughter by Angeline Boulley. Now this was such an unexpected read for me. I mainly bought it because of the cover, to be quite honest, and I thought this will be a fantasy kind of book, but it actually was not. It's more like a contemporary romance thriller kind of YA, which was just unexpected. But I also know this book handled topic about Native American, written by an actual Native American, which was, I think, amazing. We need more of that. So this book was about Denise Fontaine, who felt never quite fit in both her hometown or the nearby Ojibwe reservation. She was going to go to college, but her uncle just died, her grandmother not in a very good condition, and then one day something happened to one of her friends that has some sort of relation to drugs that currently circling around the community, and then she met with people from FBI who are currently trying to figure out what actually happened, because they thought that this drug that's circling around are a new kinds of drug made with some traditional mushrooms from around the area. So Donis, who knows a lot about science, plants, and knows the area very well, trying to help figure out who made and distribute these new drugs. She also find out that it might have some sort of correlation to what happened to her uncle. This book is so rich with details about the Ojibwe tradition. We get to see the language, all the events that they usually have, the relationship between the people in this community. This book also touches on dynamic between family members, between friends. It has some sort of fake dating romance kind of trope. The romance in it I thought was written quite well. It also has some mystery elements in it. This book has so many different things going for it, but I thought every single detail was interlaced with one another quite intricately but also beautifully. I give this book 5 stars. I truly honestly enjoy this book so much. It's also part of Reese Witherspoon's YA book club, and for good reasons. This is honestly such an interesting, entertaining, exciting, exhilarating book. Next is On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. Angie Thomas is the writer of The Hate You Give. I personally haven't read that book because I bought it when this was on sale and that one was not on sale, so I decided to pick this book first and see if I like her writing style or not. But I'm glad to say that I like her writing style very much, and I'm excited to pick up another book of hers, which is The Hate You Give and Concrete Rose, I believe. They're not part of a series, but they exist in the same universe. They live in the same neighborhood, I believe. I think this book was set right after all the things that happened in The Hate You Give. And this one specifically is about a 16-year-old Brie who wants to be a rapper. This time, it's not just because she's good at it, it's not just because it's her dream, but she really need this to happen, especially because currently things aren't so great at home. Her mom just lost her job, her brother has difficulty to find job after university even though he's like one of the smartest kid in his school. And then to make things worse, something bad happened at her school simply by the fact because she's black. This book tells a story about hip-hop, about prejudice, and about fighting for your dreams. It breaks my heart to read about all the struggles that she faced and all the injustice and prejudice that she has to face every single day. I love the writing style so much, but I think if I can nitpick it, one thing that I don't like about this book is Ree's personality. I don't really vibe with her a lot of the time. Like, she doesn't want to be judged as this kind of person, but sometimes she also falls into that by herself, and she doesn't really treat her fans that great in my opinion. A lot of the times I really like her character, but sometimes she really get on my nerves for some reason, especially during the middle to last part of the book when she was really trying to make it in the rap scene. But other than that, I thought this book was such an important book to read. I give this book a solid 4.2 stars. Cannot wait to read the Hate to Give next because I think that book will be even better than this based on a lot of other people's opinion. The next book I've read in July is An Emotion of Great Delight by Tahara Mafi, which is not a very delightful read whatsoever because it was quite a sad book. But while I love this book so much, I also think this book has some major flaws that I don't know if you can look past that. I mean, I can. I still really enjoy this book. This took place in the United States like a year or two after the tragedy in the World Trade Center building. It was so difficult for me to read because yes, I'm a Muslim, but I also live in a country where the majority of people are also Muslims, so I don't really face the hardships that she faced in this book. But it also made me think of just how lucky I am because I have it way easier than Sadie did. Obviously, that's not the only reason why this book was sad. A lot of things happened to Sadie within her family. Something really bad happened and that really changes the dynamic in her family. All the bullying that she experienced, all the hateful comments, hateful glances that she got everywhere she goes, it kind of changes things for her with her friends as well. I also read some reviews on this on Goodreads whilst I read this, and I kind of agree with a lot of the comments about the ending. The ending was really just really off. It felt like they cut out 2 or 3 chapters in the end, and it was kind of ended abruptly. Like I truly needed more information about the ending, like what happened there. It's kind of left things hanging in the air and like there's no resolutions whatsoever. But it really is sad. It really played with my emotion. Therefore, I still like this book, especially because of all the things that she experienced with one of her friends and how toxic this friend dynamic really is. I don't like reading about that, but I love that we're able to see the progression of Sadie finally realize what was toxic and what was wrong with her friendship dynamic. So in a lot of ways, I do really enjoy this book. I was ready to give this book more than 4.5 stars, but after I reached the ending, I decided to give this a solid 4 stars. So the next books I finished is the first audiobook I ever finished in my entire life, which was Sadie, and it was such a great start for me, such a great introduction to audiobook. It's not like any other audiobook. It's kind of set up like a podcast, a true crime podcast, which was very interesting. So we get a dual perspective of the podcaster and then from Sadie. The podcaster is trying to find out what happened to Sadie because Sadie went missing a couple months ago, a year after her sister Maddie died. She was murdered, but no one was able to find out what happened because they live in a very small city. They don't have a lot of resources to find out what actually happened. So Sadie take matters into her own hand, and along the way we figure out what happened with Maddie and all of the bad things that happened in Sadie's past. It was kind of fake, but you know what they mean. So I would suggest you try to find out the trigger warnings for these books first before you get into it, because it's kind of a lot and kind of touch on some really difficult topics. But in terms of the story and everything, I don't think this was the best thriller mystery book I've read. It was kind of basic. I can kind of figure out what the story was going to go all along. So I personally think I will enjoy this book a tiny bit less if I read the physical form, but because I listened to the audiobook, I had such an amazing time. Not only did we get to perspective from Sadie and the podcaster, we also get to listen the actual podcast format, all the interviews that he recorded for his podcast. I was so sure that I was listening to a real true crime story when I listened to it. And also every single character in this book have their own voice, even the very side characters that only appeared for one sentence or something. It's just very entertaining, and I had such a great time listening to it. It made me fall in love with audiobooks. So I gave the audiobook a solid 4.2 or 4.5 stars. but for the story itself, I think it was more like 4 stars. Next book I finished is also another audiobook. Because of Sadie, I really want to listen to more audiobooks, so I decided to pick up another one. It was Felix Ever After by Casey Calendar. The story is about Felix's love, who ironically never fell in love before. So this book is a perfect summer read because this was set in summer. So Felix have a summer class or something in his school, and one day somebody put up pictures of him and his previous name pre-transition because he is transgender. Of course, Felix are very angry, especially because he never told anyone at his school his previous name. It really felt like an attack coming from someone who are obviously transphobic. So he's trying to find out who's behind this. It's a book about identity and his struggle with his own. It's a book about kind of love triangle, I think. It has a little bit of enemies to lovers and friends to lovers kind of trope. The love story in this I thought was beautifully written. It's so wholesome, and the voice of this audiobook really captured Felix's emotion really well. I actually cried in the middle of the book. I can feel every single emotion of Felix when he was having this conversation with himself and also with his friends. I can feel the hurt, frustrations, the anger, the pain, just everything all in one, and it truly made me cry. I thought it was phenomenal audiobook. It's a phenomenal book that touched on very important topic that are not very talked about yet in YA, I believe. At least I haven't read a lot about these kind of topics. It was conveyed very beautifully with a lot of depths and emotions, and especially because of the narrator did such a great job, and I truly suggest you to pick this one up. No matter if you want to read this in a physical or audiobook format, I give this book a 5 stars. I kind of wanted to pick up the physical book now because I really want to be able to someday read it again in physical format. Finally, the last book that I've read in July is the last book of the Ember in the Ashes series, Sky Beyond the Storm. I read the first 3 books in June, and I was kind of planning on reading the whole entire series non-stop, but I figured I couldn't really do that because after the 3rd book I felt kind of burned out, like it was too much for my brain to handle. I need to prepare myself for what's going to happen, and I wasn't ready to let Laya in Ilya's story go because I know once I read this it's finished and I really want to savor and prolong the moment. So happy I finally read this, but I'm also kind of sad. It was such a bittersweet moment, not only because I love this series so much and I'm sad that it's finally over, but the ending is also very bittersweet. It was such a great conclusion, but some of the things that happened in there was just really sad and tragic. In this book we have a lot more point of view, not only from Laya and Elias, but also from 2 or 3 other main characters, and Sabata here did it again. She's managed to shock me with another twist yet again. Honestly, this time I was kind of expecting it. I already looked back on the first 3 books and I kind of nitpicking all the little information to kind of figure out what's going to happen because I didn't do that with the first 2 books, and now I know what I'm getting myself into, so I tried to guess, and some of the things did actually happen, but it still shocked me when it did. And I have to say I like this way more than the 3rd book. I gave the first 2 books 5 stars each, but the 3rd book I thought was a little bit of a letdown compared to the first 2. I gave it a solid 4 to 4.5 stars, mainly because it was a little bit boring at times, too much on the war side, but not as exciting as this one. It truly felt like a bridge for the first 2 books to the 4th one, to the conclusions. I felt like we could kind of condense this 4 books into 3 books in my opinion, but overall I really felt satisfied. It was such a great conclusions. Saba really did some of my favorite character dirty in the 3rd book, but I'm glad with how it turned out in the 4th book, even though some really bad thing happened to some other characters that I wish it was just so tragic. This book is so amazing because the world is so rich, the story is interesting, it's very thrilling with all the intricacies. It has so many different great elements in it, a lot of different human communities, a lot of different non-human as well. If you have never read this series, what are you waiting for? You should really get into it because I honestly think it's such an an amazing series. So that's it. Those are 7 books that I've read in the month of July. Honestly, had such an amazing month. I'm so excited for all the books that I'm going to read in August. Hopefully it will be yet another great month. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you like this video. I hope you find it somewhat entertaining, or you find any books that you might like and it inspire you to read them as well. Let me know in the comment down below what are the best books that you've read in the month of July. And lastly, I just want to say thank you so much for watching, and I hope I can see you in another video. Bye guys.